Welcome to another Unity Bits. Today we're going to develop a tool, or a script if you will, an editor script that will allow us to easily and automagically create a folder structure for a brand new project, or even allow us to add portions of a folder structure that don't exist for a current project. So if you've seen or you've had to do this before, you can create new folders under your project by just going under the Create menu and selecting Folder, and you can begin to build your folder structure that way. But of course, when you do that, there's a lot of selecting and typing that has to occur. And so if I have 5 or 6 of these, and maybe I have things under the scripts folder, or I have things in a data folder, that can take some time. The idea is to create a tool that will allow us to do that and to create that folder structure for us without us having to do all that stuff manually. So let's get started by creating an editor script, and we'll just call it, because I enjoy words, let's call it the director, because that's what it is. It's going to be it's going to create directories. So let's open this little fellow up, and what we'll do is we will, instead of deriving from mono behavior, let's derive from editor window, and that is going to be requiring us to use Unity Editor. And let's get rid of all of these things here. And the next thing we should do is have some sort of, for an editor window, we need a static function of some sort. So we'll call it static, let's just call it init. So this is the function that will be called when we want to open this window. So in order to create this and make it useful to us, we need to add it to the menu, the file menu up here. So let's go ahead and do that. And then to do that, all we need is a attribute called menu item. And in this, you can put a path, and in that path you can create your own top level, or you can put it under one of these particular drop down sub menus, if you will. So if we wanted it under window, we could simply do window/directorator, or director, or the director, whatever you want to call it. Now, even just doing that, we should actually see it show up. See, there it is right there. And of course, if we click it, then Unity will run this, which doesn't currently do anything. So let's fix that. How about it? So all we need to do is here, what we need to do is call a function called getWindow. And we can get a window of type directorator. And what that will do is just create an instance of one of these little guys, and we'll return it to Unity. So it will open up a window of sorts. Now if we come back and we do this, we will then see that, and it's off screen, but a window pops up and it says director. So yes, we can call it director. Number 1, we can call it in the way of Star Trek, The Next Generation. Director. I guess that would be number 1. So maybe we should call it number 1 instead. Number 1. Anyway. Okay, so now we have a window. So we need to draw our stuff in this window. Well, there's another function or a method that we implement that, if found, Unity will call it to draw inside of the window. And that function is onGUI. So here's what we'll do. First of all, I do want some buttons. We will want some buttons at the bottom of this window. So let's look at the window. I want some buttons down here, namely some buttons to do the actual some setting and some clearing of some things that we're going to be, some checkboxes we're going to be looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead and do a GUI layout begin horizontal, and then a GUI layout end horizontal. And that's where we're going to put, we'll just put a to-do, put our buttons. And we'll put our buttons there. Really, I suppose we could go ahead and put our buttons here, which one would be, we would say GUI layout dot button. You could say create directories. So that would be the button we press to actually do the creation of the directories, correct? Yes. So we do this. So we will say to do create directories. And additionally, what I foresee here is a set of directory names with a checkbox next to it. So when it's checked, we know that it will be created, and when it's not checked, it will not be created. That's the idea. So what we'll have is we may want to uncheck all of those. So let's say we may want to at some point uncheck all of those checkboxes. So let's go ahead and add those in as well. Uncheck all, and then we do a, if I can spell correctly, which sometimes I can, sometimes it happens I can't. So there we go. Check and uncheck all. And remember these ifs, just we will draw the button, and then if the button is actually pressed, this is the code that will be executed inside. So now we should have 3 buttons, and they'll be up top for now. Uncheck all, check all, and create directories. So now we need to do something to draw those directories we want to show. So this basically will be up to you and your preferences as to how you want to create your directory structure. But let's create a new function here, and let's call it draw directory. Let's just call it draw directory, like that. And of course I can do, since I'm in Visual Studio, I can do control period, and it will give me an option to generate a method for that. And I'm going to take that. So here we'll draw our directory. But first, let's think about what we might want when we do these directory draws. First of all, we probably want to have directories that have children in them. So if I have a directory called, say I have a directory called scripts, and then say I want under that directory, perhaps, I want a directory called maybe libs. Now this isn't the best example, but you get what I'm saying. We may want child directories, you see. So let's make this more granular. So let's, instead of saying draw directory, let's rename this and say draw directory list. I'm trying to think of a sort of an overview of how we may want to do this. And then let's go even more granular here, and let's say void draw directory. And this will draw a single directory with its let's see, do we really need this? Let me think. Maybe not. Let's hold off on this for now. So what we want to be able to do is we're probably going to want to have some sort of class that holds the information for these directories that we're going to want to be showing. So let's call a class, let's call it dir for directory. So one of the things, of course, that we want is we want the name of the directory, because that's what we're going to call it, of course. And we'll probably have some sort of create Boolean that says whether or not we want to create the directory. So let's make that a property, and you'll see why momentarily. Let's call it create. And perhaps we should say, oh, let's say, actually, let's do this. Let's say, yeah, I can't do that. So we'll do bool create, and so we'll have a backing field for that. Return create, and basically we're going to do some stuff here. So we're kind of straw manning this whole thing up, if you will. So along with the name of the directory, I would imagine that this directory will have child directories. You see, so the subdirectories under this directory. So what we're trying to do is just make a structure so that we can create our setup like we want it. So just hold on with me here. Let's do a public array of these things, and we'll call them children. So these are our children. And now we can say, we need a constructor, but more than that, we want a constructor that initializes with these two fellows here. And more than that, instead of creating desiring an array, let's just use the params, which basically just says this is going to be a variable number of arguments, and the compiler will turn it into an array of dir classes called children. So that's what we'll do here. So let's just think about how this would play out. So what we want then down here in our director class, we would probably want something static. So basically we want to go ahead and have a set of these that basically this is going to be our proposed project structure. So inside of here would be where we create the directories that we normally use for our project structure. So I have one that we could do, new directory. I typically have one called, and I don't know why, but I use underscores for some of these, prefabs. And then one called scenes. And then one called scripts. Okay, so there's a few right there, and if you notice, it doesn't have any children because there are no additional deals right there. So these are just top level directories with no children at this point. So now if we wanted to say select, so what we're doing with this create, while we have it as a property, if we set it to true, then we should assume that when we click true for this one, then all of the children would probably, we will select the same value for all of the children, is what I'm trying to say. So then we should go and say if children is not equal to null, we'll go and do a for each here. We'll say child in children. And of course, we do eventually want to say create equals value. So basically we are setting the value of create to be what we've set, what is set here in this public property. And we also want to do that for all the children. So we would say child.create. Let's actually do the top. So this is what's nice about this. So create equals value. And that will also cause the children to go through and set their children, should they have any, to the correct true or false for create, for our create Boolean flag. Right, so that looks okay for now. And what I would like to do is start drawing this stuff so that we can see kind of what's going on. So let's look at our draw function. So what we want is we really want to take our and let's say this project structure directories. So we'll name it something that makes a little bit more sense. Let's just say that. And then just to be proper, let's pass in an array of dir types in there into the draw directory list. So here we'll just pass in our project structure directories. And with that, we can begin to draw. And now, what we probably want to do, well, we definitely want to go for each directory in directories, in dirs. We want to say dir.create equals, and here's where we want to create a toggle, right? Editor GUI layout dot toggle. You could do toggle or toggle left. Let's do toggle left because it's fun. And then we can say dir.name. And then we also need the current value, which is dir.create. So let's see what happens when we do this. Does any of this work at all? Let's see what happens. Yes. So now we get checkable list of these little directories that we have already specified in our project structure here. So the idea again is to create this read-only setup with your standard project structure that you normally use, so that you can basically have the option of creating all or some of these directories as you need them for your project. Really cool, eh? So I'm going to add, let's add a sub directory or a child directory to the, not the prefabs. Let's add a sub, I'm going to pull this up here. Let's add a subdirectory to the scripts directory. So let's call new directory, of course, and that's going to be, let's call it data, like that. And something else, yeah, we'll just add it to data. So here, now let's go back to our screen, allow it to recompile momentarily, open up director, and you see we don't see it. Well, that's because we aren't currently drawing it. So what we need to do here is we need to say if directory.children is not equal to null, then basically this is another reason why we use this function with an input array of dir types, is so we can do this. So we want to draw the children. So let's see what happens now. Now we should see that data come up from here. But there's another issue here, and that is we can't tell that this data directory is a subdirectory of the scripts directory. So what we want to do is change that. So what we need to do is probably add some spaces. So let's do this. Let's add a parameter here and call it spaces. Or we could call it indents, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it spaces, and we'll set a default value of 0 so that way this still works. So when you call it from the top level, you basically want no spaces. And really all I want to do is take this directory name here and add spaces to it. And the way I can do that is let's think about this. Let's do some string. Oh, and I don't have that turned on, do I? All right, let's not do that. I don't have the I'm not, at least in this project at this point, I'm not using the newer .NET 4.x. So we'll just do it this other way for now. No big deal. Can change it later. I'm going to say new string and the character space and then the number of characters I want, which will be spaces. And then we'll add that to the directory. And then all we need to do is when we do draw directory list, if we have children, all we need to do is call this again and then add one to our spaces like that. Or maybe 2. 2 would probably work better. Now let's see what happens. This should scoot over, and it does. And I'm almost thinking that instead of this, how about this? So there is an editor GUI dot indent level, and that will determine how far the things that we draw are indented. So what we do here is we can just say the GUI indent level equals spaces. We also want to store the previous level. We store it like that, and then when we get to the end of our for loop, we will restore that to the previous level. So instead of spaces, let's call this indent level. Like that. And then, in this way, we won't be doing this. So we'll actually indent the checkboxes as well. Let's see what that looks like. Let's change that to a 1 instead of a 2. So we will only indent it once. Now, this is, of course, up to you whether you want to, and you can see there that there's that functionality that we created in here, which was to, when we click this little guy, it automatically sets this one. But now, as you can see, we've got an issue here where we're not getting this one set. So we need to fix that as well. Okay, so let's look into that. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on there. So Of course, yes, okay, yes, that doesn't make sense because the whole time this guy right here is he's getting set every time. So we need to do a little bit of, probably a little bit of logic here. Since we're setting all of them at once. Let's say this. So what we need to do, we need to say if create is not equal. So basically, if it's changed here, that's the only time we want to change the children. Otherwise, we don't want to worry about the children, and we don't want to mess with them. So we should get the desired behavior, which is that's exactly what we want. Yep. All right. Beautiful. So basically, the children are only changed whenever the current value of the parent is different, is basically when we set it to something different, and that's exactly what we want. Lovely, lovely. So let's flesh out our directory structure a little bit, at least according to the way that I like to do it. Let's also allow for, let's create another constructor. So let's call this default create. So what we'll do is we'll say, so that way we can specify whether we want that checkbox to be enacted, or that directory to be created by default or not. And I just thought of something. Check this out. Here, we can't say that we want to create this guy when this guy's not created. So to create a child, the parent has got to be checked. So let's add another deal here, and let's call it, so basically we want to know what the parent is. So do you have a parent? So we do know that if we do this, then these guys are going to have a parent. So we'll set their parents. And that's the way we do that is just like this. So there we are. Child.parent is this. And so now we're connecting them. So now we should come here and we should say if value is not equal to create, or no, we should say, are you trying to set the value? If you are, and we have a parent, then we need to set that parent's create to true. So let's check and make sure that works. So we have, oh no, so it looks like we've got a little bit of a Stack Overflow here. Yeah, let's try, let's try, do we want to clear them? So anytime we turn off the parent, let's just turn off all the children. That makes sense to me. So there. And then if we turn this one on, it automatically turns on that guy. Yeah, I think that behavior looks good to me. So now we have that going on, and we can additionally say we should do the following. If parent unequal to null and default create basically is true, then we need to set parent dot create equals true. Whoops, parent dot create equals true. Just like that. And that the reason we would want to do that is, say we have the data and we'll say we want to default to create the data, and then we don't want to specify scripts. That script is going to have to be created, so we should be setting that to a true value as well. Looks like I caused a Stack Overflow again. It's partial 44. So really this should be an else if. So let's change this around and make it a little more clear. If not, if we're turning this off and our children are not null, then we need to do some good stuff here. So let's check it out and see what we have. Directorator. That works. That works. Okay. And really this really isn't going to do us any good. And we could, up here, we could say if child.create, then create equals true. Something like that. And that would get us what we desire, which would be to have, if we have any of those subdirectories set, then certainly the parent should be set as well. And that does work. Okay, that's what we want. Yeah, so a little bit interesting stuff there. Okay, shall we continue? Yes, yes, we shall. So now we have a scripts directory and a data directory. And I'm going to turn that true off right there. And let's think of a few others that we may want. Well, the prefabs, of course. A nice little shortcut to set it up on the parent class. So we'll go back, and I should probably just leave this window open, my fault. Director, there, just like that. So let's say that we'll create him by default, or we'll set his flag to create by default. Scenes is another one that I use commonly. Textures, plugins, prefabs. Let's just start with those. So now we have a setup here. We also want to go on and utilize or enable this stuff. No problem, right? All we have to do is pop in a for each here, and then we can just say dir.create. Oh, sorry, it's project structure directories. .create equals, this is an uncheck, so it says false, and we only have to do it for the top level, remember, because it will uncheck everything in the bottom. And then we say check all. We can say .create is true. So we could, this is a little bit misleading, because check all, if we go back over here and we look at the check all, that's going to check, it will allow us to, so we can uncheck everything, we can check everything, but you notice that it will only check the top level. So we could say check top. And what we could do is add another method, and we can call it set children. Then we could just do this for each child in children. Basically, if we want to check all of them, basically create everything, including the child directories, create val. So then we could just go down through here and say child dot create equals create val. But actually, we wouldn't want to do that. We would say create equals create val. So we set it on this one. Set, let's just say set all children. And I need to put a void there, don't I? A void! And then we would say here instead we would say child.setChildren, so the child would set its children as well to create value. Then all we need to do is come down here. We could say check top, and then we could also add one that says check all, and that would simply be directory.set all children to true. By Jove, I think we may have it, at least as far as the creation and deletion goes. Here we are. So check top works. How about check all? Check all indeed gets that one. Uncheck everything, it unchecks everything. Now all we need to do is implement the create directories function. So let's create a directory, a create directory function. We'll call it create directories. Original name, yes? And we'll pass it in the project structure directories. And I'll do a control period to generate that method. And here's our method. We'll do a for each again. And we'll do for each dir in project structure directories. So now here, what we need to do is we need to check. So we need to say if directory.create. So are we supposed to create this directory? And does it exist? So we can say is, and I mean not, we'll use the asset database dot is valid folder. So we want to know, does the asset database see this as a valid folder? So our parent directory for all of these, we could also add this as a parameter. I don't, at this point we don't have any reason to change it, but there it is. But it's going to be the assets folder. So parent directory plus a separator plus this name of this directory. So if it's not a valid folder, then we need to tell the asset database we want to create this folder. And we want to create it, the parent directory, of course, which is going to be assets, and then the name of the directory. And we also need to say if this directory's children are not null, then we need to also create directories for the children, dir.children. And this assets directory will be the same. But actually, we should probably go ahead and pass this in so that we'll propagate that. And voila, we should be ready to go. So let's give it a spin, shall we? So let's come up, grab our window, and let's check all, and let's click create directories and see what happens. And there they are. We do have one issue, which is that data directory. Yeah, he's not created correctly. So one of the things that we've forgotten is that parent name needs to be included when we're doing this creation. So actually, that's my fault because I just remembered. When we call this create directories here for the children, we need to add the directory name. So we did need that as a way to specify. So now Now we should see what we want. Let's go do a reset here. So we'll delete these. We delete all these directories and we'll come back up, grab the director, check all, create directories, and now we have exactly what we want. There you are, ladies and gentlemen, a lovely script to help you when you're first creating your project. And remember, you can be in the middle of a project and not have one of these folders, of course, and say, I need the textures folder, and simply create it. And no issues, no problems. So there you are. Hope it was useful. And that's a little bit about how to create a very simple editor window in Unity. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.